If you accept that astrology is real, then you might be questioning, okay, how is it real? One of the theories is that it's causal. The planets are actually imbuing us with some type of energetic frequency that's like similar to their own.
So many people are waking up to the reality that I am not my programs, but I actually am a soul. And it takes discipline, it takes understanding, it takes willingness to dive into those emotional places.
Think of the sun itself. Like, what is the sun? And connect to that. Your sun is your purpose. It's where you're going to feel alive. It's the cure for your depression.
Spiritually, being aligned with what it is that purpose and passion is derived from for each of us individually.
If we think of the moon, it comes out at night, it goes in cycles, it's kind of mysterious, it's in tune with the inner world. So it's really helpful to kind of shamanistically connect to planets so that you can understand them better.
What is that divine purpose that's always felt? Being purposeful in every moment. It's just wild how much can be emotionally reprogrammed with authentic communication that connects with the area of the soul.
The earth is the now element. Earth is what's actually happening now. Fire's this like vision, something in the future I'm excited for. Water's the past of like, oh, my relationships. I had that time with Tyler. And then the air is like, oh, I can see the past, I can see the present, I can see the future. So air can kind of go anywhere. And then we kind of go to ether and we're like, oh, and there's like this beyond.
And we need the ether. It's that spirit, that source energy, that intuitive guidance, that connection, knowing that we're all one thing. Welcome to the Ascend podcast. I have a very special guest today, Nick Wright, aka Etheric. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you so much, brother.
Well, I would love to jump right into what is evolutionary astrology?
Ooh, great question. So there's more personality-based astrology that we find in pop culture that is more like, oh, I'm an Aries, so I'm aggressive. Oh man, I'm a Cancerian, I have Cancer sun, so I'm very sensitive. I'm Gemini, so I'm manipulative. But I also have some of these good traits, whereas instead of being like descriptive in that way, it's a Newtonian, it's more quantum. It's more like a quantum astrology modality where, oh, I have Aries energy, and that energy can be expressed with ego and aggression and like selfishness, or it can be expressed as courage and more virtuous qualities of that same energy. So evolutionary astrology gives us something that we can grow into.
Wow. When did you just like look up your sign at some point, or did you have a friend that tapped your shoulder and you're like, this is interesting? How did that journey begin?
Yeah, I didn't believe in astrology at all. My parents were very scientific doctors, and so I kind of learned this I was on this rigorous academic track, and we never went to church or anything like that. We kind of all just felt religion was bullshit, spirituality was bullshit. I didn't really even know what spirituality was. I just knew all these people were fighting over which God was real, and they were killing each other over that. So I was like, I don't know if I want anything to do with this. And it was when I was 20 years old that I was going through some addiction struggles and mental health challenges. And I started to find personal development and spirituality at that time. And I found someone gave me an astrology book by Joanne Martine Woolfolk, and it was called The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need. And I was looking for anything.
And a title.
It's a great title. Yeah. And I was just looking for anything that could get me out of the place that I was in. And so I opened up this book and I read about Gemini. Gemini is my sun sign. And I'm just like, whoa, this feels really accurate. And I just related with it. And then I started testing it. I started bringing it to all my friends and different people. And I started being like, just testing it, reading it, and finding some actual correlations there. So like I was kind of being a scientist about, is astrology real or not? And I was testing it with every person I came across. And then I started to find, oh, it's not just these sun signs. There's not just 12 types. It gets really, really complex and really nuanced the more you get into it. Oh, I have a moon sign, I have a Venus sign, I have a Mars sign. And the more I looked into it, the more I saw there's something really to this. And I started to see, Pythagoras was an astrologer, Johannes Kepler, some of our most famous astronomers and scientists were into astrology. I found out Sigmund Freud's protege, which was Carl Jung, right? We talk about Carl Jung a lot in the spiritual community because he took Freud's psychology and brought in spirituality. He brought in alchemy and he brought in astrology, and he also was skeptical. But when he did a test with like 60 couples and looked at Mars and Venus signs, and the data that he found was just so unbelievable that it changed his belief on astrology. And then he became really deeply into astrology and archetypes and studied that for, the rest of his life, even more heavy in his later years.
Wow.
So I think astrology feels a certain way because it's like a word that's like astrology. It's something that, I don't know, girls on Instagram are looking at only, or it's just like something for, that girls like, but it's bullshit or something like that. I don't know. And then coming to really like get into the astrological community, there's men and women that are just so brilliant and useful and, well-spoken, and their ideas are very expansive around the subject, and starting to see like this is a real thing. And when you start to get into it and you find like the right people that are doing it at higher levels, it's just astonishing.
Could you express from your perspective why you believe there's truth here, or why there's direction here? Like, what is it about us being born at a certain time, a certain place? Why would that have any imprint on us?
It's a great question. Ptolemy, who was like more in the, 2nd century, like way back when, like, 2000 years ago, that era, he was a mathematician.
What was their name?
His name's Ptolemy. It's actually spelled with a P, Ptolemy. And you might see him in math books and stuff like that too. But he was a deep astrologer, and he thought, is it causal? Are the planets like sending us rays that are making us, become like this? Because if you accept that astrology is real, then you might be questioning, okay, how is it real? That's basically the question you're asking me. And one of the theories is that it's causal, like the planets are actually imbuing us with some type of energetic frequency that's like similar to their own. Or Carl Jung says it's synchronicity. So it's more like we live in a fractal universe, and infinitely big, infinitely small. And like if we can see these larger bodies and they have these certain qualities, then by nature we're just a part of that. So by synchronicity, it just is, because everything is connected in that unified fashion.
Yeah, I'm wondering how time plays into that aspect, because you're mentioning a delineation at the beginning around Newtonian physics, right? Like cause and effect, really, like 3D intangible, and then quantum, like an interconnected, particle and wave. Entanglement, right? It can happen. And so how do you personally like view and decipher the relevance of this, like how it's become relevant?
Yeah, great question. And that's, to me, the relevance is what's actually important. I kind of gave up trying to understand exactly how it works, because I don't know if we can, It's like, how does anything work? And that's what science and, we try to do. We try to figure out how things work. But but it's just, to me, the principle of like, it's infinite, it's ever growing, there's always evolution. That's how it becomes relevant, because, you know, for example, if you have the moon in Aries, Tyler, and the sun and the sun in Cancer. So if we look at your moon in Aries, like we were talking about, and the moon is your emotional nature, we say, I am connected to the moon in Aries. That's an energy frequency that I resonate with, that, you know, is me. So that has to manifest by astrological law. But how it manifests based on how you direct it. So, you know, you could see maybe in relationships or different times in my life, when I get stressed, maybe I go to this fire or this anger. But then when I'm more healed and I'm more in tune with myself and I understand what's happening, I can like move that energy up and turn that fire into courage, and turn that into holding the torch for someone else, inspiring somebody. You know, so it's like, I am fiery though, you know, it's a fire. Is it fire medicine or is it fire shadow? And understanding that, it's like, and now you know what your particular medicine is. So it really helps you to be individuated, because, you know, without that, we are what our mom and dad taught us we are. We're what society taught us we are, what, you know, society, the government and media and educational system, versus like, I'm a divine being, I'm a divine spark, I'm the soul. Cool. Okay. We all know that. But what is Tyler Drake, the manifestation of Tyler Drake in this body, supposed to do? And what is he imbued with? What are his gifts? What are his challenges? Astrology can show all that with incredible accuracy.
This is so wild. I'm visualizing a video game, right? And how there's the different like rankings for if you're picking a vehicle, if you're in a racing game, and this one's acceleration's really high, right? But its handling isn't as good, or its, you know, its top speed's really good. But there's all these different factors. And so almost like a role-playing game. And here we are driving these avatars, living in these bodies, right? Where the soul is part of us, integrated as one thing, but yet is separate. Like this body is not, like my body is not my soul. My soul is not my brain, for example, but my brain, I feel, is a connection to the all, to the cosmos, to God, universe, source, Gus, whatever we'd like to refer, you know, to the great mystery that is the undercurrent of everything. And so I love when you're describing it through that lens of, okay, well, if Aries is in the emotional house for me, then that means that I can be really passionate. I can be really just energized around emotion, right? And it can be utilized. It just is. And then depending on who I am and how I'm showing up in each moment, right? I could be using that really productively and helpfully, like you were describing, being courageous and able to lead, right? In scenarios where I'm actually feeling really good, like with the podcast. This one feels really good. I've been wanting to do this forever and, you know, finally doing it. Here we are. And so knowing that aspect of myself has been really helpful. So that's just a little bit on the moon. So the sun is the one that most of us are hearing about, right? The sun sign is the primary sign.
Yeah. Let me comment on that too, because I love the RPG metaphor. The RPG metaphor, I see it similarly with astrology. So you kind of come in the game, maybe you're an archer and you have high attack but little defense. Or maybe you're a warrior, you have high strength but you're slow, or something like that. Or, you know, like a tanky warrior type. So you come in with that type, you pick that type, but then depending on how you play the game, you can up level in different areas based on free will, you know? But you have the character that you came in with. So he's always going to have certain particularities.
How do you play with the value of shoring up quote unquote weaknesses or areas that aren't as strong, right? Versus leaning into strengths?
Yeah, that's a great question. How I think the best answer for that is, maximize the strengths and work on the weaknesses. And in an astrology chart, it can all kind of be summed up to fire, earth, air, and water as the most simplistic thing. So you can see a score of how much energy you have of each of those. And those are like the OG archetypes: fire, earth, air, water. The like simplest, most
fire, earth, air, water.
Yeah.
Isn't ether considered a fifth?
Yes, ether would be the fifth element. Yeah, but in terms of like being a human, the four elements are most relevant. Ether is more connects with like spirit and soul and consciousness itself. Because ether is the quantum field. They actually called it the ether field at one point.
Right. Napoleon Hill refers to it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. So that's how, so it makes sense why we had personality astrology or Newtonian physics. It was part of the evolution that we're all going through. And then once we discover quantum principles, we say, evolutionary astrology, and we realize we're all in the spectrum and evolving. So astrology has to change with it. But then we find out, okay, this is what they were saying way back anyway, so we're kind of coming full circle with this quantum physics.
Wow. Okay, so the sun sign is the primary. Do you relate that to a specific aspect of personality?
Yeah, and you can use words, like there's keywords for the sun, which would be like purpose. Some people call it your ego structure, like your personality. But I think what's really helpful for people is to think of the sun itself. Like, what is the sun? And connect to that. And it's this generative, life-giving, it's always on. It's bright. It's sunny. Like if I have a bright and sunny disposition, it's that radiance that's coming out, So it's that part of you. If we think of the moon, it comes out at night. It goes in cycles. It's kind of mysterious. It's, it's in tune with the inner world. So it's really helpful to kind of shamanistically connect to planets so that you can understand them better. And then, you look at the words that astrologers have been using since the beginning of time to understand them. So, but I like to, if I just am telling someone about this or working with someone on their chart, it's like your sun is your purpose. It's where you're going to feel alive. It's the cure for your depression.
Ooh. The sun is the cure for your depression.
Yeah.
That could be a double entendre there. The physical sun can absolutely be an influence, and then spiritually being aligned with what it is that purpose and passion is derived from for each of us individually.
Exactly. So some people might be, if your moon is your comfort zone, it's how you feel safe more because it's your emotional inner nature. It's your feminine side in a way. Your sun is more of your masculine giving side. So some people, if they're like, I don't like my career, I don't like my life during the day, I don't feel like, then it's like, let's look at your sun sign. If it's like, okay, someone likes their career, but their emotional nature is messed up and they don't like their relationships. Let's look at your moon. Let's look at what you need. The sun is like what you want, what you're like really desirous about. Yeah.
The sun is what we want. The moon is what we need.
Yeah, for sure. You have the sun in Cancer. So Cancer is a water sign. So you're going to feel best when you're, emotionally connected to what you're doing, like caring about what you're doing. It's like, I really care about this podcast. I care about these people. I care about serving. And when you feel that, it's like you're lit up because Cancer is a water sign. It's an emotional sign. And so if you use that energy to like care about things, that's one of your powers, superpowers, is caring. And water's that.
I'm a Care Bear.
Yeah. You're a Care Bear, but then you have that moon in Aries. So you're also like, you have this firepower as well, Because those are kind of opposite energies, fire and water. Fire is this kind of more this
Right.
masculine energy, this yang energy. And it's kind of, I like to refer to it as like masculine emotion. It's like this desire, it's this passion. And then water is like this feminine emotion. It's this receptivity, holding space, connection, emotional connection. It's the kind of an opposite energy. Fire is, like some people say, it's the purest element because it can't really be affected by anything. You know, anything that goes in it, it transmutes. Whereas water is this very vulnerable element where anything that goes into it stays in it, and it can screw it up, you know? It can poison it. Water gets poisoned. Fire doesn't get poisoned, you know?
And water holds all the information.
Exactly.
It holds everything. I mean, it holds the energy. It holds physical imprints. If I'm to throw a rock into a pond and actually capture the crystalline structures, it's all reflective of that.
Yes. So water
And
is
water
the
doesn't
past.
disappear. It just transmutes.
Exactly. And so water is connected with the past, and fire is connected with the future. You know, people talk about, because fire is what you're going towards. You want to be lit up and excited to go towards something. It's also your sexual energy.
Yes.
It's your kundalini fire. It's that sexual energy it's desire, you know? So what are you putting that into? Because you know, if you feel down and then all of a sudden, you know, your girlfriend wants to have sex with you, you're like, what is that though? What is that, like, words or an idea in your mind changed your vibe so much and made you like really focused in and honed in and fired up for something? You know, that's fire.
Fired up.
Exactly. And then water is like, am I safe? Do I feel cared about? Do I feel like this a healthy connection? You know, am I kind of, water's like this healing energy, because you go too much into fire and you start to burn out, or you start to burn people, you know, you start to hurt others with that. So that's why water is this, I need to bring it down, calm down. We're safe. We're all good. I love you, you know? And I'm kind of saying that in a fiery way, but it's like, no, it's okay. I love you. You know, it's all good. Like, you know, do you need to talk about it? Let's talk about it. You know, I'm here with you. It's like, oh, okay. I can relax now. Right? It's the parasympathetic nervous system versus the sympathetic nervous system, you know?
I love that as we're developing this conversation, I'm seeing you expand into more and more parallels. You're able to draw the frame of reference and the understanding of how all of it is interwoven.
So what element would that be? Do you think it air or earth?
Air.
Exactly. Air is kind of, it's up here weaving all these things together. It's the sign of magic and synchronicity, communication, magic words, spelling, you know, it's that air element. I always think of J.K. Rowling as an example. Like, that person wrote symbols on a page and she's a billionaire. So what is that telling you about the air element, what it's capable of? It's putting these pictures in people's heads that transform them, you know, that they're able to read, and that has some kind of permanent effect. Harry Potter's touched the lives of, you know, billions, right? And that's just words on a page. So that's the air element. People that are using communication and discovering these synchronicities to you know, send that out on the airwaves. And, you know, the winds of change, they come, and the air is what's changing our paradigms. And then downward energy, that's the earth. That's the earth element. That's like the only one that's actually real, because it's physical reality. So I'm grounded. I'm here and now, right? The earth is the now element. I'm right here. Fire's this like vision into something in the future I'm excited for. Water's the past of like, oh, my relationships. I had that time with Tyler in Arcadia, and that was really powerful. And I like him. You know, I feel a good feeling for him. Fire, I want this to happen. Earth, this is what's actually happening now. And then the air is like, oh, I can see the past. I can see the present. I can see the future. So air can kind of go anywhere, you know? So when we talk about Earth in the present moment, it's, you know, anything that we're actually doing. How are these books on my shelf? How is this picture framed, you know? What's the health of my body right now? What's my bank account look like? It's the actual reality, you know? It's the physical reality. The air is the mental reality. The water is the emotional reality. The fire is the spiritual reality. So it's just beautiful. Like, yeah, these elements are just so, I haven't found anything more simplistic that can kind of capture all of life, basically, that, you know, is relevant to us. And then we kind of go to ether and we're like,
Wow.
oh, and there's like this beyond. And so that's kind of this infinite element of like, whoa, there's a beyond. And I don't fully know where that goes.
How did you define what the air element is?
Oh yeah. The air is the mind. It's thinking. The mind is more than thinking, honestly, but you know, it's kind of this mental reality. You know, it's
Hermetic
the
principles.
Yeah. So if you think of like the all is mind in that way, you know, that could be linked more to consciousness, the way that they're referring to it in the Hermetic principles, which I like to link more to ether, because ether is kind of the space. It represents space and consciousness, the one that witnesses and holds all of it. That's kind of what ether does. It connects them all by that way. Because, right, we live in 99.9% empty space in this physical plane. So ether is what scientists have discovered, this quantum field is kind of linked to that. So then what's everything else? Everything else is, you know, the other elements with varying densities, right? Earth would be the densest, and then water, and then fire, and then air, and then ether. So they kind of go in and out density wise, you know? So, you know, when we think of ether and air, they are similar. But I think of air as the thing that you're actually wielding, you know? Ether is more of this pure field. And then air, we're like pulling things down, channeling, pulling things down. And then we're warping it into words, right? Like someone like Bashar is like, he's a speaker, he's a channeler, and he's tuned into that highest density of the etheric field, and or whatever, you know, those higher dimensional realms, and he's channeling it and putting it into words. Whereas J.K. Rowling might be going from the water to the air. So she's drawing from her personal experience. And let me write this. Or she's seeing something on the earth level and like observing it, you know, and writing from that place, or writing from her desires, you know, her fire, like I want this, and then writing it. So it's like really cool because these elements play with each other. They each interact with each other in unique ways.
Wow, I love that framing. It's much more clear now. It's like air is what we can do in our own mental capacity, and ether is the all. It's the allness. It's the all-encompassing, the Akash, however it wants to be framed, right? God, universe, source, oneness. It would be the allness, and so it's more of an element to tap into, and then to transmute into, whether it's fire, right? Future-focused passion, right? Groundedness in the present. To maybe understand emotional states or why certain things have happened in life, to then become more like rationalized, pulling in from the ether, from that God consciousness, and bringing it down. This is so fascinating, bro.
Yeah, I love that. I love the way you just frame that too. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. So 20 years old, you got this book, right? The last book you need. What a confident title.
Yeah.
On astrology, right?
The only book you'll ever need. Yeah.
Oh, the only book. Even better.
Yeah.
And so at that point, did you start to find out parts of yourself, right? Like, how did you do your own self-discovery process and kind of piecing apart different aspects of who you are?
Exactly. That's the beauty of astrology. A lot of people that may be watching this, or a lot of people know about parts theory. You know, we have these multiple aspects of ourself. And yeah, astrology showed me some of my aspects, you know? So I have a lot of Gemini energy, and that's kind of the over here, I'm saying this, I'm saying that, I'm freestyling. You know, it's kind of this, it's a mutable air sign. It's a flexible air sign. And
what do you mean by flexible?
Yeah, so there is a thing, there's fixed, mutable, and cardinal. And that has to do with like seasons. So any sign that starts a season, so right when the spring equinox hits, you know, March 21st around, that starts Aries. So it's a cardinal fire sign. So cardinal's initiatory, leading. And then we have what comes next, Taurus, which is a fixed earth sign. Why? Because it's holding that energy of spring. It's fixed. It's stubborn.
So cardinal literally being like the bird, right?
I don't, no. Just cardinal in terms of like leading, you know, and initiating.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know any relation with cardinal the bird, but I'm sure there is. And then
I feel like birds are leading, like they're constantly leading through the sky. So it's a nice one for me to remember that with.
For sure, that's a mnemonic. Yeah, that's incredible. Not a mnemonic, but yeah, that's a good teaching tool for sure. And then we have fixed signs. So we have Taurus next, fixed Earth, and because it goes fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water. Cardinal, fixed, mutable, cardinal, fixed, mutable, cardinal, fixed, mutable, cardinal, fixed, mutable. So 4 times 3, we have 12. So you're going to have a fixed fire sign. You're going to have a cardinal fire sign and a mutable fire sign. So the cardinal signs are the first of the seasons, initiating. Fixed are holding the seasons, solid, stubborn, powerful. And then mutable are the end of the seasons, getting ready to change. So they're mutable, adaptable, and flexible. So you'll see people have like a lot of fixed energy. Are they really stubborn, but kind of good at what they are good at because they've been focused on that one thing? And then you have more mutable people that are like, oh, I could be in any situation and make it work. Or cardinal people that are just always like leading and maybe starting new things, maybe not finishing them as well as a fixed person would. But this is some of the stats in the video game that you see. And you're like, oh, I see why I'm like this. And maybe I could use this to my advantage as a strength, or maybe I could learn about my weaknesses too, and see how, like, if you see how all these things play together and what different benefits different things have, like different characters, you know, oh, I need an archer, I need a warrior, I need a mage, I need a healer, you know, I need all these types. I need a king, warrior, magician, lover, right? King, earth, warrior, fire, magician, air, and lover, water. It's fun. It's so fun, these connections, you know, to the elements. You got to know the elements. Something about them.
Yeah. I mean, we take part in the elements constantly. If we're showering, right, or we're cleaning off with water at any point in our life, we're interacting with water, right? If we're drinking anything fluid, there's probably some amount of water in there, right? If we don't have fire, we don't have heat. The sun doesn't show up for us, or if we don't spin to allow the sun to show up for us, we don't actually have anything here. Like, maybe not anything. There are creatures that have been found in the sea vents that have zero light. But they're still getting heat, right? Whether it was from the sun out there, it's probably from the center of the earth.
Yes.
This is so interesting, man.
We need air, food, and water. Food is earth, physical matter. We need some food stuff. We need to breathe the air. We need to drink the water. And we need the heat from the sun, you know?
And one could also extend and say, and we need the ether. Doesn't matter what somebody's framing is, what label that they would choose to utilize, but that's that spirit, that source energy, right? That intuitive guidance, that connection, knowing that we're all one thing and that we actually can love each other. And as you were describing those different elements, I was realizing in the RPG analogy, it actually allows so much more compassion to show those areas of self that have been like, why do I suck at following through with things? Right? Instead of judging it, it's like, oh, you came into this with that being a low priority in your skill set. And so do I want to improve that personally? Sure. But if I don't, I can at least know that if I have people around me that are really good at follow through, right, then I can love and I can honor that in myself and them while getting more and more of my unique ability.
Exactly. Yeah, you're either going to improve it in yourself or find someone else that has that element. For sure.
Bingo.
What I love about it so much is that it's like you can stop competing with people. You know, you can compete in like a healthy way. That's like, yeah, we're firing each other up to stick to things and get better. But no one can be Tyler Drake. No one can be Nick Wright. Like a chart doesn't even repeat itself for 25,000 years. They're truly unique. Like every chart is truly unique in ways that we don't even understand, because there's tons of asteroids being discovered and different research going into astrology all the time and updating as we discover more. So it's like you got astronomers, they're discovering more in space, but the astrologers are like discovering more internally, you know?
And they're both probably infinite.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's like wow, that's so cool. Air and ether, infinite. But then we're like, oh, but I'm on planet Earth. So how do I like take this stuff and do something with it? And that's what I do with people.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that? How do you first begin? I would imagine it's a chart reading, right?
See, oddly enough, Tyler, I don't necessarily use astrology in my coaching. So I call it soul-centered coaching, because I try to just bring out what's already in somebody that they know about. And if my frameworks or the way I see things with astrology or the elements can be useful for people, I will certainly impart that and talk about that. But I only do that if it's necessary, because you don't need to know astrology. You don't need to know about the elements to achieve your goals necessarily. Right? I think that's a good place to start, because if you decide my framework of reality is the only truth or better than everything else, that's where you get into a dogmatic religion with it, you know?
Absolutely.
Versus like with coaching, it's more about like, listening, asking the right questions, drawing in their connection to their soul, and like some people will be like, I really want to know astrology. And it's like, oh, we go astrology heavy. And some people are just like, I need help with my addictions, or I need help with my relationship. I need help with my career, or I want to learn spirituality. In that case, yeah, we're going to talk about the elements and astrology. But yeah, if like there's any framework that I teach, it is going to be the elements, but from a place of like, what do you like? I don't know. You tell me,
Yeah, it's interesting because my first instinct was the Newtonian physics style. Oh, get the chart, right? And work backwards from there, where it feels like, no, yours is a much more integrated approach because you really understand these principles and frameworks. So they're not the thing that leads. They get supported by what you learn. So it's actually more of an intuitive conversation with each of your clients to discover and uncover, right, what it is that their fire really is in, right? What lights them up? Where's the water still holding the imprints of these painful experiences or the, abuse or neglect or whatever stories are being held onto?
Exactly. So whether or not we use fire, I'm going to want to know, what's your purpose? What are you fired up about, without even needing to describe that as a metaphysical principle. And then water, how are your relationships? How are your bonds with other people? How's your, like, how do you feel about yourself? You know, is there stored trauma and emotions from the past? What's your self-talk? What's your words? What's your air? You know, what's your health and habits and the way you are productive and earth element, you know? So it's just like a beautiful, it's just really cool because you can be really like a metaphysician, like kind of like a doctor of the soul, like where you can really see, you can see someone. Yeah, you can, it's like a diagnostic tool for the soul, you know? It's super interesting. So I always have it on the back end. I always make sure I'm looking at that, like when I'm doing sessions, and I'm in tune with what's going on at those levels. But in the actual hour-long conversation, I have to make sure like what's being said is very relevant for that person, that will help them actually produce results, like actually change, actually have something happen like in their life, versus like me on this podcast, just like getting to have a lot of fun being like talking about all this stuff I'm super fascinated by. But I don't spend my coaching sessions necessarily saying any of this stuff, you know, because it's about them and their life and what they need help with, you know?
And what I find so magical about this is I'm finding massive illumination in this process. And I'm sure that, you know, our listener over here is also finding so much benefit, just even understanding these principles and your perspective and the interweaving, the interconnectedness of all things.
Yeah. Yeah. And someone like you, that's like a student of metaphysics and spirituality, I think this stuff is really useful because it simplifies things and helps you. And like, you know, what's cool about the elements compared to like a religion is that the elements definitely exist. Like there is fire, there is water, there is earth, like these are real things. So now we're just like, we're just looking at these things and making connections to other things with these things. And then it's a very real, like useful spiritual system that's not based on like an idea we can't really prove. I guess we can't prove some of these symbolic synchronistic things about the elements, but we can at least observe them, and we can, you know, it makes sense. There's like a logic to it that I really like.
Yeah, they're all felt. Every one of us has had the experience of understanding each of these elements intimately.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. I mean, I just think about, you know, if a child runs in and puts their hand in a fire or like falls in a fire and they get burns, right? And then the burns are physically on the body. So it's like earthed in, and the emotional, the water aspect, how much would be holding on to that. So that person's process of catching up to now and being fully present and accepting all that was and is, right, would be huge in that watery area. And then it seems like fire, like what is being transmuted from this, right? What is this reminding me of? How do I get to put this challenge into service?
For sure.
I'm curious, are you willing to talk about yourself a little bit here? Like how you've deciphered aspects of your own personality, or what it is that you find to be, you know, what would you find to be most useful if you were a listener on the other side?
If I don't get so Jupiter in Gemini, which is like, you know, Gemini is this communicator that's flexible, but it's like when you have Jupiter and the sun in Gemini, it's like connection, and the connections go very deep, you know? So I have to know, oh, he's asking a specific question. So now I have to, you know, tone it in, bring it to nuts and bolts. Okay. So you want to know specific aspects of my astrology chart. So I have the sun in Gemini, so that I'm this airy communicator. And then I have 4 planets in Cancer. So I'm also want to be emotionally connected and feel safe, and I can make people feel safe. But those
4, is that 4 out of 12?
No. Well, it's rising Mars, Venus, and Chiron. Yeah, there's like 10 major planets, and there's 12 signs. But
okay.
Yeah.
But that would be like a third.
Yeah,
like
you could say that.
33%
Yeah.
of you is watery.
Yeah. Of the main planets that are used, like I said, there's tons of asteroids and different things that can be in different signs, but the main planets, like, I would say I have like a third. Yeah, third Cancer, third Gemini. And then I have a bunch of stuff in Capricorn, which is more this earth, like disciplined, structured, ambitious, like wanting to achieve mastery at different things, and is, can really like hone in on like, so that's why I realized for myself, like, okay, if I want to do freestyle rapping, that's the Gemini skill, connecting the dots. And then there's going to be a watery feel. So there's kind of this sentimental, like emotional feel. Maybe there's some singing and there's some like more emotional parts to it. And then the Capricorn's like, and I got to hit that every single time I'm in the car and practice that,
This makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Because Gemini doesn't want to be structured. Gemini just wants to flow and do whatever it wants. And Capricorn doesn't want to be, it wants to know exactly what it's doing and be like dedicated to that. So, okay, if these are two parts, then I have to combine them,
Integrate.
Exactly.
Into greatness.
Exactly. and it's really like playing an instrument. It's learning how to play the instrument of your soul, like astrology, It's fucking dope.
Learning how to play the instrument of our soul.
Yes. Getting in tune with your makeup, your archetypal field, your archetypal flow. Like, what's in tune for Tyler Drake?
I mean, I look at people that pull out an acoustic guitar and they're putting on their tuner constantly, even if they're very experienced guitar players. You want to make sure that the instrument is tuned to what it is divinely inspired to create.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And think about this. Like, if you don't understand your astrology, or at least some way to know who you really are behind the conditioning patterns, astrology being one great tool for that, that's why people are not happy, or they're just like, they're not themselves. They're literally not themselves, and they think they're someone else, and they believe that, And that's just part of being in the third density with an ego. We all kind of go through that. So instead of like starting from conditioning patterns, we start from soul. We start from
ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, we start from that. And then we're like, conditioning itself isn't bad. That's Saturn. Saturn is conditioning. But we are the deciders of what we're conditioning now. We are the authorities. Bingo. Saturn is authority and conditioning. Author is in the word authority. So we become authors. And then we can, if we want to condition ourselves, Mars, martial arts, right? Mars is the fight, all the fighting. And these words are everywhere because the ancients really understood this. All the Greek gods are the planets, and most cultures had the gods were the planets. The gods have always been the planets. It's different characteristics. So once we can just start connecting all these dots, bringing it from real far away, etheric, airy, philosophical, to really here and now. Every herb is linked to a planet. Every stone and crystal is linked to a planet. They understood that these things, it's a fractal. Really? It's a fractal universe. Yeah. There's different metals and different rocks and different herbs, especially. Like there's some people that are specialists, astrologers and herbalists. And they can use, there's a whole field called medical astrology, because they all represent different parts of the body. So it's really cool, man.
No way.
Yeah. So that's why even in astrology, Tyler, there's like so many different disciplines that you could be. Like a medical astrologer versus me is worlds apart in what we do and how we use astrology, but it's still astrology. It's astrology is like the intermediary between here and there, the finite and the infinite. It's like So I think it needs to become something that becomes studied more seriously again, right? Hippocrates, who doctors take the Hippocratic oath, said A doctor without knowledge of astrology should not call himself a doctor. That's what he believed.
Whoa.
And we're all taking the Hippocratic Oath. You know what I'm saying? Pythagoras, Ptolemy,
Whoa.
you know, Carl Jung, like, yeah, there's just so many heavy hitters that realize at a certain point, if you want to like understand reality, you have to include a study of astrology, you know?
Wow.
But it should never take the place of life, because astrology for some people can become so heady and you get in your mind about it and you get like, you're not living anymore, you know? So you have to study it.
I'll bet you've gone through phases of that, being such a deep, being an air sign, being such a voracious learner, just you have an encyclopedic understanding. And so I imagine those rabbit holes. And then it's like, how do I come back into my body? And what you said earlier about the conditioning versus coming from the soul, like what is the soul inspired to, right? What is that divine purpose that's always felt, right? Being purposeful in every moment versus this conditioning. And I mean, wow, the correlations here, the Hippocratic Oath, this whole concept. I mean, it's just wild. It's all like we are solistic beings. It's so odd that we have a manufactured, ecosystem of education. This is like an assembly line style, especially with the convergence of all of this digital intelligence now that's going exponential. I mean, we're hitting this ridiculous bell curve up. And, the analog side, I feel like spiritually, so many people are waking up, right? Waking up to the reality that I am not my programs, but I actually am a soul and I get to choose all of them, right? And it takes discipline, it takes understanding, it takes willingness to dive into those emotional places. And it's all a self-generated experience. So the more that I'm intentionally choosing, like you mentioned self-talk earlier when you mentioned the mind, that is something that's been dramatically improving in my life. Been working with William and Preston actually on a whole self-talk reprogramming. And it's amazing, like using the personal I statements and then, second person, and it's Tyler, right? Tyler, you are incredible. Tyler, it's just wild how much can be emotionally reprogrammed with authentic communication that connects with the area of the soul that's in need, right? Or the parts of the body that are in need to be more connected to the soul.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like with what William's doing with the affirmations, it's like the words themselves are the air, the thinking, but repping specific phrases, that's the earth. And he's a Capricorn. Like he is the earth sign. It's like structure, discipline, effectiveness, So, we went deep into the air today, the air is fun, exciting, interesting, like really tickles our curiosity. But if you just stay there, nothing actually changed. It's just like you got stimulated. It was really fun. Whoa, I saw connections. But what's cool about that is like when connections really hit you and you understand them, you'll start acting differently. You could start acting differently because of understanding things differently. So I actually had a conversation because he was talking about, you need to start from the body, the physical, before anything else. And I'm thinking, well, you could go in from the mental and then that will affect the physical too. I think hopefully you'll hit it from multiple angles,
Yeah, and each person's going to resonate with each style, right?
Yes.
Like yours might actually be more linked to that mental through the air element. And then, once the understanding is there, then it can actually weave on the other than conscious levels and show up in the physical. I feel like I relate with that a lot, actually.
The air.
Do you have anything to say around that?
I would need to pull
Do I have much air in my chart?
The problem with that is that it's on this device that I'm using right now. So, so I could go close this window, but I don't know if we want to do that.
where do you feel like that plays in my aspect, right? Because like with freestyle, for example, that's something that's really important to me, and it's one of my favorite forms of artistic expression. That would have to be an air element, right?
For sure. Or Mercury being in a certain place, or third house.
It's so cool. Like you got to meet Aaron Abke, and actually, you want to tell everybody about that experience?
Yeah. So Aaron Abke, if you don't know who he is, he's just a great teacher of spiritual concepts, and he makes great videos, and he's a great communicator, and really has helped me understand some concepts that were really helpful. And I went to one of his events 2 weekends ago, and we kind of talked a little bit, and we ended up having dinner after the show. And then I told him that I was an astrologer and a rapper and stuff, and he was like, you should rap my chart. I was like, it's crazy that you just said that, because I've been like thinking about that as an idea for a little bit now, and now you're giving me this platform and this opportunity. So I just pulled out his chart, freestyled it, and it worked out. It was really cool.
That's so awesome, man. Have you shared that?
I haven't even shared it. Yeah, I have it on my phone.
Oh man, I'd love to see it. And if you're willing to share it, I can plug it into the show notes too on this episode.
The reason I didn't share it is because I didn't know if that was all right with him, because I kind of went deep into his life and some of it, and because when you see someone's chart, you can see a lot, So that's the reason I didn't. But Tyler's like, fuck it, let's go. Tyler's like, let's go, let's do it. Who cares? Mm-hmm. That's right. That's the Aries moon versus my Libra moon. We have opposite moon signs. So
you balance.
Exactly. So Libra's always polarities balance. So Libra's always like, no, let's keep it peaceful, let's keep it harmonious, let's not rock the boat. And Aries is like, hey, I want to rock the boat. I want to go here,
This is so true, man. Like just in all of our friendship, it's just so interesting to see how now as we're getting to understand each other deeper, and as you're teaching me these philosophies and frameworks, it's just like so much clicking.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why this is happening, because I'm just connecting to you, and I'm just saying whatever's coming through that's based on our connection. And that's synastry, which is the study of two charts. So we think of tuning the instrument. So everyone has their own unique song to play, but everyone combined, every instrument together makes something new. So everyone's connection is truly unique. Like you and me is different than you and William, or William and Preston, or Preston and Chris, or whatever. But they're all this part of this.
Wow.
And then if you have three people, it's like there's different dynamics that are very specific, for each person. It's really cool, especially when you know the astrology.
Did you say synastry?
It's called synastry. Synastry.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah, there's some people that just focus on that. Like it's relationship astrology. And it's very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, solo is relationship to self, and then synastry would be for relationship to everyone else in that specific relationship paradigm.
Exactly.
Okay, so as partnerships go, how do you find astrology fitting in there?
So useful, because if you think that you're right by the way you live or the way you do things, that's going to cause a problem in a relationship. And Moon in Aries, that's a challenging planet for a moon sign, because the moon is about that emotional safety and relating. And Aries is like this fighter warrior that's like, I'm doing this, And Libra is like the sign of relationships. So it's like, hey, is everything, what are you doing? Are we cool? We good? Let's get on the same page. So that's why but that Libra person can be too much in another person and lose himself. So Aries and Libra, we have to balance ourselves, being like, oh, I got to be more about the other as a Libra, as an Aries. And Libra's like, I got to be more about the self, because that's not our natural inclination.
It's so interesting too, because as we've gone through different experiences in life, I've noticed when there was an incoherence, your path is through the mental, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you want to make sure and like talk it out with language and stuff. And I'm like, just hug.
Exactly, bro. Yes. Air moon signs. Oh, let's talk about it. Let's make sure we're on the same page mentally. That's how it wants to fix things. Water's like, can you just hold me?
Yep.
And fire's like, no, we're good. We're good.
Yeah. That's so wild, man. It's really nice to hear these types of confirmation, right? Because there's all these things that have shown up as other than conscious patterns in my life and behavior traits, etc. And so to be able to rest in what feels like a resonant truth around a natural mode of being, right? And then just adapting with that. Right. So in that kind of circumstance, okay, well, if we need more words, we can utilize more words. But my natural gravity is going to want to be like fire and water together. So it's like passionate hug. Like, all right, emotional, boom, we're good. Right. That's like a rebalancing tool for me that's been incredibly effective. But then for some other people, they don't want physical touch. They don't want a hug, for example. And so that's been an area of growth for me, is to be able to honor each person with their unique style.
Exactly. Yeah. Air and earth are left-brained and water and fire are right-brained. So your gift is like, yeah, that's another really cool distinction. You know, and air is like masculine, like logic, philosophy, understanding, you know, more, and earth is more like sensual and here, you know, and practical. Like, is it, you know, we grounded, receptive. Earth is receptive. Air is, you know, active. Fire is active. Water is receptive. Left brain, right brain, water, fire, and left brain, air, earth. So when you're, you know, and that's just some cool connections. But if we're just thinking of, I like to think of it more like a mystic, more like the magic of it. Like, because I think that's the most true thing anyway. Like, you know, I mean, I love the science. I love like understanding it, but it's like, you are fire, you are water. And when you think of that, you tune into that, you embody that. And it's like, hey, bro, it's like, that's fire and water. It's like, what is that doing? It's like, you know, it's like you're playing a video game and the healer's like healing and the HP's rising, you know? It's like your medicine. Your particular fire, water,
the
medicine.
mana is increasing.
Exactly. And people are just, they're, you know, it's changing them. But so is air. And earth and air can too. Air gives people clarity, you know, and like, oh, because if they're like, air is like, well, confused, it's like clarity, you know? I don't know what to do about this thing. Oh, you can do this. Oh, clarity. It just clears that. Yeah. Earth is like, hey, I need some money. I need a place to stay. I need some food. In survival mode, you know?
It feels like the more that one can practice each of these like individual embodiments, right? Practice being of the mind and having time to meditate or to just have thinking time and go over questions or whatever it is in that mental capacity. You challenged me with this a while ago, actually. Forget the exact context, but it was around just locking in and allowing that thinking time to marinate deeper and deeper and allow that connection then to the ether to flow on a deeper level. And then, for example, with William, great example of an earth-oriented being, like incredibly grounded, incredibly connected, and incredibly tapped in. So through that natural gravity, right, that's where he's able to tap into the ether more. So interesting to see how these things play out. Like if one is in their most natural element, then they'd be connected in flow, right? More frequently. Do you find that to be accurate?
Yes. Yeah. I'm just going to say a simple yes.
Love it. Look, that's you practicing the grounded element right here.
Exactly. And also
so
putting
cool,
a pin in
man.
it because the air wants to say something else about the fire in you, because you want to push push people towards doing something that they're scared of, having courage. That's what Aries does. It's about courage to do something that they're most afraid of, take action. And air is like, hey, before we take action, let's think about this. Let's make sure. And that's, that makes you take informed action,
Exactly. The point of power is at the center. So now I'm looking at it as in northeast or north, south, east, west, right? And so it's actually where is the compass pointing? And am I actually in the center of that compass? If I'm in the center of that compass, life is complete flow. I'm in balance. I'm checking in emotionally. I'm connected to myself. I'm connected to everything and everyone else. I'm grounded and rooted. I'm connected. I'm eating healthy. I'm nutritious because that's the only thing that would be done when the awareness is in alignment with what is divine. My thoughts would be correlated with health and vitality and strength and endurance, whatever it is that those positive traits would be, like the soul aligned positive traits. And then that means that my emotional state would be of balance because it's in that the full wheel is able to spin. If this is a wheel with a hub and spokes, it's incredible, bro. There's an entirely new lens on something that I've been looking at for a long, long time. Thank you.
You're welcome, man. Yeah, I'm glad you're receptive to it. It gives clarity and categories to everything that just really simplifies things.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for tapping in. Thank you so much for tapping in on this journey today. Wow. This is why we call it the Ascend Podcast. I feel like I have ascended in so many aspects just connecting with you today, brother. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for connecting. Thank you for playing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, brother.
Absolutely. All right, listener, feel free to leave a comment below what it is that you learned, what it is that really resonated with you. Please share this with at least one person that you know their soul will be touched, right? This is what we do. Thank you so much for your support. You stayed all the way to the end. You're one of those rare people. Thank you so much. Incredible. I can't wait for the next time that we get to have the incredible Etheric, of course, bringing in the ether in there, Mr. Nick Wright himself. Thank you so much, brother.